This podcast is brought to you by the people at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Subscribe to the Patreon and get access to the Slack channel to get your favorite episodes early and get extra episodes of your favorite podcast. That's patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv.
What's a Magneto?
Child Flash.
What's a Magneto?
My motorcycle.
What's a Magneto? What's a Magneto?
Does it hurt?
What's a Magneto? What's a Magneto?
My motorcycle.
What's a Magneto?
My motorcycle.
What's a Magneto? What's a Magneto? What's a Magneto? What's a Magneto?
I'm Jeremy Greer.
I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this is Days of Future Cast, the show where we talk about the 90s X-Men animated series. Except we're not doing that this week, are we, Gary?
No, we do lots of things. Every show just eventually becomes like a muddy soup of doing whatever we want. Yeah, just a vague X-Men premise. Well, so we had the idea because the X-Men animated series is interesting because it's adapting the comics and this franchise that we both really like to between seasons do X-Men movies. There are like 8 of them. They vary wildly in quality. And
do they?
boy howdy. After watching, so just to put it up there, so I was just going to say this and not refer to what it is. This episode, we are covering the first X-Men movie, the 2000, just unadjectived, unsuffixed X-Men. Watching this made me kind of, in my head, rank them. Like, I think somebody on Twitter was like, rank the X-Men movies, and it was the first time I thought about them, like the ones I'd seen in order, like which ones are better. And I was surprised to find on rewatching this is like firmly in the middle.
Yeah, I remember this movie being a lot better than it is. I think the first half is very, very strong. Like, I think it does some really good things of introducing you to like the team, and also like at the same time, for the people that already know who that team is, kind of giving them a little fan service. But man, the back half is really weak.
The everything with the Statue of Liberty comes in as hot garbage, like absolute hot trash. And it's not just the famous parts that are hot trash. All the rest of it is hot trash too. But we're going to talk about the good stuff, the bad stuff, all the good things and the bad things, baby. This is the first episode that we've recorded since the show launched, like properly.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you everybody for supporting the Patreon at Duckfeed.tv/Patreon. This is a huge thing for me.
That's not a web address.
What did you say? What did I say?
Duckfeed.tv/Patreon. It's patreon.com/DuckFeedTV.
Oh, well, Cole will fix that in post. Don't worry.
Yes. We just send this to him to edit.
Cole, I invented a website. You need to go ahead and knock that out for me.
Yeah, make this true. Yeah, that's yeah. So for everybody, all our patrons who made the show happen, and for a little while we were like, it's on the bubble, it might go away and stuff. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think this is here as long as you're willing to listen to it. So
and we'll probably branch into, as the show grows, we'll probably branch into all sorts of media. Like I like these movies and like these TV shows. There's other X-Men cartoons I want to cover. I think there's plenty of fodder for us to go through for a long time.
Totally. There's one, I've never seen X-Men Evolution. So I'm curious about it. 2, Jeremy, did you know that I own a Star Trek The Next Generation X-Men crossover novel?
I mean, I'm not supposed to, because I'm not supposed to admit that I've been looking through your windows at night. But
okay, it is it's front.
There's a novel of that. I've seen the comic.
I think they're both. It's called Planet X, my friend, and like that would be a pretty fun thing to do for the show at some point.
I remember, the only thing I remember in the comic is oh shit, people are gonna get real mad that I can't remember Star Trek names. Spock just basically like taking down Wolverine and with no effort whatsoever.
I'm so happy this is Next Generation, because like, original.
Oh,
series,
I haven't seen this then.
Yeah, original series Star Trek is like kind of actiony and feels like, kind of in line with the X-Men. And the Next Generation is my favorite Star Trek because it's so dorky and stiff and like stodgy and stuff. And I'm just imagining, these like angry discussions of ethics between Picard and Xavier that just go on for chapters. And then at some point there's a Wolverine versus Worf fight where they both admit that the other one has honor. And just like, Bub, you're like the samurai from space. Just like
Just Riker and Wolverine just like straight up like pounding beers at the replicator, right?
it'd be fantastic. I'm way into that. And then Riker gets really drunk and starts talking about Troy, and Wolverine starts talking about Mariko. And then they go to the holodeck and recreate Mariko, and it's ethically dubious.
Sure, why not?
I
sort of want those Picard versus Xavier moments to be like the God Emperor of Doom, like just chapters of expansive talking, just one giant worm just imagining a bunch of shit in his head.
They're just going to be them shooting beams at each other's foreheads, and it just being beams like each other out.
And they're both played by the same guy, right? Like in your head, like you see two Patrick Stewart staring at each other.
Yeah, there's no universe in which these are not both Patrick Stewarts. That would be the kind of thing we could cover on the show as it goes on.
I think you could do a reasonable good job of casting every Next Generation actor as an X-Men, right? Like Picard, like Riker
not as from the movie, just as actual characters. So like Cyclops is Riker.
Sure, yeah.
Wolverine is Wolverine.
Troy is Jean Grey.
Yeah.
Like I think you can make
her as the original Mallrat, Jubilee.
Wesley is Jubilee, absolutely.
Wesley is Shadowcat. Data as Morph.
Sure. Anyway.
Anywho, so X-Men, made in the year 2000, directed by Bryan Singer, screenplay by David Hayter, and lots of people. So written by Tom DeSanto, Bryan Singer, and this movie kind of famously went through a lot of different drafts of writing. So, the big trivia.
You want to give us our plot description?
Well, the big trivia thing, real quick, is that like Joss Whedon had a pass of it, but it's kind of up in the air what stayed in. And according to him, there's just 2 lines that stayed in, and we'll call those out when we get to them. So he did a pass, and almost all of his stuff got cut out. I think Joss Whedon would have been a good X-Men writer.
I think if he had made Astonishing X-Men, like that Astonishing X-Men comic #1, like if you just make that into a movie, I think you're doing a pretty good job. Like as much as that exists only in comic form with the timing, like I think those ideas would be pretty awesome in a movie as well.
Yep, I think that would be cool too. Jeremy, tell us a little bit about the plot.
Sure. This is stolen from film_fan at IMDb, just to give full credit where credit is due, because I couldn't really find an official one anywhere.
Fan mail. If you're a film_fan, then send your _fan mail.
In a world where both mutants and humans fear each other, Marie, better known as Rogue, runs away from home and hitches a ride with another mutant, known as Logan, also known as Wolverine. Charles Xavier, who owns a school for young mutants, sends Storm and Cyclops to bring them back before it is too late. Magneto, who believes a war is approaching, has an evil plan in mind and needs young Rogue to help him.
They really gave up with that known as thing in the second half of that paragraph.
Yeah, like Magneto, like AKA Eric, AKA the Crimson Magneto.
The Crimson Force. So should we do this before we get into actually going through the movie? Do you want to talk about your history with it, or like what you thought when you first saw it, all that jazz?
Yeah, I think we should do that at the top. Like I remember seeing this movie and being just completely blown away that there was a good X-Men movie. Like seeing a trailer for this and like I remember specifically telling my friends like there's no way that movie is going to be as good as that trailer made it look. Like there's just no way. Like this is the fucking X-Men. Like there's just no way this is going to not look like garbage. And for the year 2000, it actually was pretty awesome. Like going to the theater with my buds to see this and being kind of the one guy there that do a lot about X-Men. Like all of my friends were asking me like, so who was so-and-so and who was so-and-so and what does this mean and what does that mean? Like they were doing that thing that people do nowadays with the Marvel movies. Like who is that in the post-credits trailer and all that stuff. Sure. So I remember being really, really into this movie, and have watched it sporadically over the years. Like I watch superhero movies, like they're just kind of, popcorn basically. So I've kind of been into it for a while.
You've got to move to Portland at some point. Like I understand you have to give up your swamp roots, but like I would like to have a buddy who I can watch superhero movies with out here because I don't really have that. Sometimes game group people will be into it, but they not consistently.
I'm assuming you've already got your tickets for Doctor Strange, right? Like you got that arranged.
I haven't done that just yet. I'm going to go see it though. It looks cool. And I might end up going seeing it by myself, which is not, the mark of an absolute loser or anything. It doesn't mean I'm automatically going to turn into Robert De Niro from Cape Fear as soon as I go to a movie, alone. But it's just more fun to see
that
movies
ship
with
done
people.
sailed.
Yes, it's just more fun to see movies with people. So like, yeah, I need to find a superhero buddy out here. All my comics buddies are back home. All my comics buddies are all people I went and saw this with in the year 2000 as well, and it blew my goddamn mind. I was so into it, like, and I didn't see any flaws in it when I saw it as a 20-year-old. I came out of this and told my friends, and I have a very distinct memory of walking to the car in the parking lot and being like, I want a new one of these every month. Like, can you please just have this exact, like, a new story of this serialized X-Men thing pop out, every single month?
I mean, that would have been like if you'd put this, if Netflix had existed back then, right? Like you would want an X-Men show on like Netflix doing what they're doing with Daredevil and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. Like that's where I would want to see that.
Yeah, I would want that, but like maybe a little bit denser storytelling and like, a little bit higher budget, because those shows like are all good, but they also, kind of slow down. They're really focused on street level stuff, and this has to be kind of a big spectacle kind of thing.
Yeah. Also, yeah, true.
But I loved it, like absolutely, like adored it. And then when the second one came out, which we'll get to eventually, like I was just like, this is the greatest movie of all time. Like how are there? What do we do to deserve superhero movies this good? And then like it ebbed and flowed. And in general, like I'm with you. Like I generally like superhero movies. I think that like the batting average is pretty good for most Marvel movies. Even though this is, technically a Fox movie and there's that dumb thing. But yeah, I was blown away. And a big part of what made this so cool is the casting of it, which I think is almost note perfect.
Yes. With some exceptions that we've called out in this show before, like just talking about Halle Berry as Storm, I just don't think she can really carry that. We covered that back in episode 3, I think.
Yeah.
2 or 3, whatever.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Cyclops, Wolverine, Xavier, Jean Grey, like everybody in here is just awesome. At Magneto, like everybody is perfect.
This is the definitive Magneto. Like this is the greatest Magneto that will ever be. Like it's really, really good. And it's so awesome that like they they always wanted Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart was the only choice for Xavier, and then they brought on Magneto. Magneto didn't want to do it. Is my understanding. So like they are Ian McKellen.
I was about to say.
Oh yeah. This is a documentary, Jeremy. He didn't want to relive this dark time in his life when he was obsessed with statues and energy fields and being a fucking idiot. Which, like, as much as his performance is wonderful, his plotting and planning and stuff in this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
But the casting is really, really good, and they are like the definitive versions of them for me. This was the first thing I had seen Hugh Jackman in, and like. He's really good for it. Like I think he actually works really, really, really well for this. And was
watching it again yesterday. Like I felt this way when I watched it because I've watched it twice since we started talking about doing the show. And I feel like he's kind of cheesy now, but like 20-year-old Jeremy was all about that shit. Like the weird growls in the middle of fights and like the kind of like badassery. There's a couple of one-liners that he has that I think are just so hilarious now that I think I was all the fuck into in the year 2000. So,
I mean, it is, it is kind of a kid's movie. It is before, your Avengers and your Guardians of the Galaxy where like superhero movies are for everyone.
Because before this, the most popular Marvel movie was what, Blade, you think?
Yeah. It was Blade kind of started, there being, before that there were Marvel movies in the 80s and stuff, but it kind of started this weird proto, wave 1.5 of superhero movies, and it like wasn't for kids, it was for like casual sci-fi fans. And some of the downfalls of the movie have to do with them just kind of trying to make it like a big blockbuster and not indulging in stuff from the comics, but it also was not aimed at literally everyone. It wasn't the most popular genre of movie like it is now, where like if you make like Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that, it's everyone is expected to see it. So there is a little bit of cheese, a little bit of like slow, sloppy exposition that has to happen just to get everyone on board for it.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, like every Marvel movie, essentially, starts with DNA wipes.
I love the as well as Xavier is like, in the future, we're going to, and I like this stuff, but like it's such a like a lawnmower man kind of thing when you look at it like 16 years later. You're like, oh, okay, I know what you were going for back then, but just you can't help but like, I don't know, man. Like PS1 games look bad, Super Nintendo games still look pretty fucking good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's pretty cheesy. It's also like it is ubiquitous. So every X-Men movie begins with this kind of explaining mutation. All the Spider-Man movies begin with this too. Like a lot of times,
sure.
like
Why not?
shows all his DNA getting is essentially any character that has DNA. Like if you watch that Bridget Jones's Baby movie, like the camera goes and zooms into her stomach, it
right
goes
into her
the
uterus,
baby, and then goes into the baby's DNA, and it shows like all the electrons like crackling, and
then it forms Pierce Brosnan's face.
Yeah, exactly. Pregnancy every months,
Every few thousand millennia, Bridget gets pregnant.
Oh my god! And every time it is a red tide by which the world will never recover. But yeah, so the Professor Xavier says that line, which I don't know. Evolution takes a leap forward. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like it's the tone is perfect for what it needs to do. Like we're trying to set a stage here of like shit is changing. Like anything could be happening right now. So.
I actually like how many intros this movie has. It's kind of set like it's a little bit sloppy, but it actually kind of works, I think. So because we get that, and then we get the first intro of several, which is the Holocaust going on. We've talked before about how Magneto is definitely from World War II, even though the cartoon doesn't acknowledge us. The movie will. He's getting separated from his parents here and starts freaking out and uses his magnetic powers to try to get closer to them by grabbing onto this fence and stuff. And there's a weird, like, this is really beautifully shot. It's really rainy and muddy and like super grim, kind of thing. It's the soldiers don't react like this is weird at all until after it's over.
Yeah, then they start looking around going, what the fuck? Like, up to that, they're like, we got to hold on to this kid.
This is fine. Yeah, like, just, all that matters is we pull this kid away. But nobody, like, shouts or, like, nobody's, like, freaking out.
It makes me think that the Nazis thought that the fence was grabbing Magneto.
Oh.
No, we got to protect the Jew.
The good Chaman fence is stopping the Jew from getting away. So that's intro one. A little kid gets hit in the head with a rifle. Intro two.
Yeah.
We meet Rogue, and this gives us our like intro. Our this movie cinematic take on Rogue's origin of like kissing Cody.
Sure, which is fine. Like I was very glad rewatching this that they probably didn't go, that they didn't go with the comics version of Rogue of being like an adult and having kind of mind raped Carol Danvers and having like huge balloon breasts. Like this is a pretty low key take on Rogue that I think works really well. Like we'll get to it later, but like her eventually getting her stripe and all that stuff. Like I think most of the Rogue stuff in this movie works for me to a degree.
It's not faithful to the comics, but it's better. And that's something that exactly. Like I think I talked about this when we talked about the Juggernaut in an earlier episode, where like slavishness to the comics, like you want to get the spirit of it, and you don't want to dumb things down, but you also there are changes for cinematic universes and stuff that can be better. And this is just so much less complicated. Like, imagine if the intro to this was like her with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, like touching Carol Danvers.
Yeah, you'd have to explain what Carol Danvers is.
Exactly, or what the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants were, what an Avenger is, and what like Carol Danvers goes to space and shit. Like this is significantly better, and it's like played for horror because one of the big themes of this is that like mutant powers are not just a gift, it's a curse, and this is a great kind of articulation of it. They went really heavy with the Rogue side of that as opposed to the Cyclops side of it, which is a kind of a traditional point of view character, for that. I like them presented as two, like Cyclops is kind of adjusted, Rogue is not, and they're going to be both shown, with both kind of like not equally devastating, but both very devastating kind of curses with them.
And I did, in doing some research on the movie, apparently they did write the scene of, Cyclops in high school and who gets his powers and blows the roof off or whatever, but didn't end up filming it until much later, until X-Men Apocalypse comes along. So it's kind of interesting that like that storytelling method will work with the X-Men just about every single time. Just, showing how that they get their powers and showing that it's kind of a big deal and that it's not always like, in the very first episode, I talked of like getting mutant powers like it was like winning the lottery, and it's definitely not that way in the movies.
And they also shot one of those or wrote one of those for Jean Grey as well. But skip those. And it's kind of interesting the way this movie has a couple of different point of view characters, but then there are the established 3 X-Men, who just kind of show up and are just fine and stuff too. It's pretty well done, I think. Moving on.
Rogue is talking about like the trips that she wants to make. Her boyfriend puts the moves on her. She kisses him, and then he starts going into like. He gets like the death veins, like the Rogue. Yeah, he gets the death veins
to visually represent a power that doesn't have a visual element. How do we do it? And it's just she's just screaming and like I didn't do anything and stuff. It like she sells it pretty well. She's a good actress.
Yeah.
Anna Paquin is her name, right?
Mm-hmm. Also known as Suki. Suki.
What is that from?
I don't know. You've never watched True Blood?
No.
Oh man.
Jeremy.
See, it's a weird way to watch for me because I'm used to seeing Anna Paquin, if that's how you say her last name, in True Blood, where she's basically like a little nympho fairy vampire chick, and so like going back to teenage Suki, like, and her boyfriend in True Blood says her name just like that. He just like leans into the mic and goes Suki, like it's very good, very funny. Let's do a True Blood podcast. Let's get rid of this X-Men stuff.
Jeez. Isn't it like my understanding is that starts out as sexy vampires and then eventually becomes like sexy pixies and sexy like entirely sexy World of Darkness, sexy werewolves.
Here's a phrase that True Blood taught me: werepanther.
Oh no.
Yeah. Come with me on that journey. Anyway. After Rogue kind of disables her would-be boyfriend, we cut to like this scene where Jean Grey is giving a speech in front of Congress about mutants and about mutant rights. She's rudely interrupted by a familiar face from the cartoons, Senator Kelly, who is very anti-mutants at this point. And this whole scene is really weird to me because they definitely show like Congress, but then this is like a open forum, like back in the days of Rome, the Roman Empire, where there's just an audience that can like cheer. Like, dude, like none of this stuff actually exists.
I think that happens in every time there's an X-Men Congress scene because it happens in the cartoon too.
Yeah,
like there's just some randos filling out the crowd.
We couldn't get enough Congress guys in here. They're on vacation.
But speaking of casting and stuff, I forgot how good the guy who plays Senator Kelly is. I don't know if you remember this from when this movie came out, but there were websites that were like, it was like no on Proposition something, and they were like Senator Kelly campaign websites that were like the viral marketing for this.
Like they did a whole alternate reality thing, didn't they? I forgot about that.
Yeah, like they had buttons, like campaign buttons and stuff about this issue. And this actor is really great. Like I think he does a really good job of selling it. I haven't seen this guy in a lot of other stuff, this like character actor, but he does a really good job. She gives the speech. It's kind of contentious. The crowd is clearly on Kelly's side, and before it even is over, a man leaves the room, and it turns out to be Magneto. And Xavier finds him, and this is one of the best. Like, this is what sold me on these two actors. Is this thing like? There's a delivery in this scene that has stuck with me for no good reason since I first saw it, where like when Magneto's walking away and he's like, "We are the future, Charles." Not them. There's like this, like him kind of just chiding him, insistent, like, kind of tone to it that I think is really, really like a nice little bit of acting.
It's like a finger wag to somebody's entire moral structure.
Yeah.
Nope, it's not going to be them. It's going to be us.
Yep.
Yeah. There's I'm going to call them out too. That there's some line deliveries in this that are weirdly specific. Like it's almost, they feel very coached to get a certain reaction, and I'm not sure what they're going. There's one that Rogue delivers later that I was listening to last night, and I rewound it several times, going like, "What? Why does she say it like this?"
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
yeah.
So Gene, Xavier and Magneto kind of have this conversation about like basically what we've seen from the cartoon and what we've seen from the comic books. Magneto definitely thinks mutants are the future. Xavier's like, we got to work with the humans, and then they split.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is where they met and formed like the world's like best bromance. Like these guys are the cutest people in the world. They like the internet loves them, and they should. They are the cutest couple that's ever been.
Yes, absolutely.
I love them so much. It's going to be like when one of them is going to die, it's going to be sad because they're dead, but it's going to be sadder because the other one's going to have to deal with it. Yeah. Like I'm sad because Ian McKellen will die, but I'm sadder for that day for Patrick Stewart.
because he's gonna have to like really have some grief. Like this is gonna be really bad for him.
It's gonna suck. But I love them. I love this little scene. They both are killing it like as performances of these characters, I think. Cut to, so this is like our fourth cut. Like we are so like that's still kind of introducing characters in the beginning of the movie. Like this movie had a huge task to kind of like introduce this concept, introduce these characters in this world, and did a really good job of it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So cut to Northern Canada. Our Rogue has taken off. She's run away, and she walks into another character's introduction.
The Wolverine.
In a fighting pit.
Yeah. This whole setup is like it's very cliche from the comics, where like Wolverine is wandering around in the abandoned towns of Canada in some sort of weird fight club situation, and it just cracks me up every time. Like I'm sure there's illegal fighting pits around and I just don't know about them, but like,
well, we can't talk about them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It just weirds me out, and I love it when like the big dude comes in and he's going to take down Wolverine, and they do the he beats on him a little bit, and then every time, and it's the only time in the movie that it happens, Wolverine starts punching this dude, and you get like really solid metallic thonks, like dong, dong, dong noises.
Well, you have to like, as the director or the writer, you have to be like, how do I show that this guy's skeleton is made of metal without somebody saying it? And this doesn't quite do it, but it is hard to show. Some things are easier told. Like it would be easier to do in a comic than the movie. This also has the really like. We're going to talk about humor in this movie because it's wildly uneven, and like this is the first little bit of explicit humor where like the guy's like, "Don't hit him in the balls; he'll take it personal," and it's like that's like what and that turns out it's like a Chekhov's ball situation. Like there's a pair of balls.
Yeah, we're not going to see that for another hour and a half.
But we will see it. That sucks. Like, why does this have to become a personality? Like on the back of the cinematic Wolverine trading card, it's like dislikes. Get kicked in the balls.
Yeah, couldn't that just be assumed? Like,
yeah, I don't dig it. My favorite thing, CBT. So anyway, so they get into this fight. He leaves. They're at the bar. Rogue is thinking about stealing from charity, and they're watching.
Well, not charity, but like stealing the tip jar, which is kind of shitty.
Yeah, I just assumed that was for like, I don't know, like Alaska Orphan Program in this like weird 2-building town that they're in. Like,
won't someone please think of the Canadian children?
Yeah, can we get money so people can move from the smaller house to the bigger house in this town?
And I didn't call it out specifically in the notes, but like during the background of this, we get like this newsfeed that's setting up kind of, oh hey, there's going to be some world leaders all congregating in New York City, and they're going to talk about all kinds of world problems, including the mutant problem. And then Rogan and Wolverine just kind of like share this very significant look.
Yeah, the world leader summit is one of the stupidest that like leads to the dumb end plot, like macro plot of this movie. Magneto's stupid scheme that comes through this. But when the guy comes up and he's like, you have our money, and like again, this is I might be just me reliving my 20-year-old of just this totally working for me. How like Hugh Jackman characterizes Wolverine is just kind of like, you don't want this, at first, and then, but just not going to take any shit, So
I think the line here is really good, right? Like you took my money, and like if you want to, you can walk away with just losing your money, or you can keep messing with me and lose more. Like,
yeah, you're
going to
lose
kind of
more,
a badass. Like he pulls it off very well.
He's real quiet, And then Claws pops, which is like the thing that the fans like we all wanted to see at this point. But the bartender isn't having this, and I love this little characterization beat too. Is that like Wolverine could have just walked at that point, but he needs to show that he didn't need to. So yeah. he lashes out and he's like, listen, you are out of your fucking depth here. And like, I'm not going to kill everyone in this bar because I don't want to, not because you have forced me not to.
Yeah. It's not important enough for me to be right. I also have to be right with my claws.
Yes, exactly. Right with my claws and right with my God. And they get, so she goes along, she jumps in the back of his truck. He leaves. He finds him because he's got super senses, and eventually invites her up, and like they're kind of doing this Wolverine
will they won't they
dynamic. This what
I said, will they won't they, like is he gonna take her, is he not gonna take her?
Yeah. And there's a thing here too, and this is where like he she looks at his knuckles and she's like,
when they come out, does it hurt? every time.
And when I was younger, I did a comic. I used to have a comic zine, and I did a comic of this scene because it was not too long after this came out, where she's like, "Does it hurt?" And he goes, "Every time." Here, and he grabs her hand, puts it next to his hand, and then pops his claws. Like,
So she can kind of feel it.
It feels like that, you know. It's like no shit. But you know,
Oh, it's good.
like Clanbassador comics.
Yeah, that's one of the line deliveries I was talking about of like, you know, does it hurt? And he's like, every time. And I'm like, it's such a, and it's a characterization thing for Wolverine. Like we want to see, like we want to see him as this badass that's also got a heart of gold that will protect these young girls and also kind of be sensitive at the same time. But
yeah,
man, that every time it just slays me. I start cracking up every time I hear it.
It's definitely too much. You know, like I can imagine a panel of him like with his hat down, you can't see his eyes, and him just going every time. It's in kind of small text, you know. But I wouldn't read it like that in my head. And this next, so Wolverine keeps a bunch of first of all, glove compartment beef jerky. Which I
Yeah,
love.
that's healthy.
His glove jerky that he's got. And then I want to get a gif of just like Rogue just wolfing down beef jerky. That's like what happens in this movie. And then the stupid car crash scene. How dumb is this? Like Deus Ex, like what movie is this from? Like, shouldn't you put on your seatbelt? Well, I don't need my whoa. What good timing, Log.
You think Sabretooth had like a microphone implanted in there? So
Well,
he was like,
he's a tech expert. Like we've established,
right? Yeah,
he's
like he's probably
bombs and technology. So
bombs and technology, exactly.
So they hit a log and they fly out, and this is pretty great too. I love when Wolverine flies out and he like hits the ground and just slides for a long time. Like that's a really cool looking. Like I don't know, I just thought that was cool looking.
They have a lot of fun with kind of fucking Wolverine up in this movie because they absolutely know that he can just heal himself back. So why not like have him get stabbed a couple of times? Like why not like fuck his face up? Because you can. Like who cares?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the only one who can fuck up like that. Yeah.
So he wakes up and heals, and Rogue is like watching that. Meanwhile, there's a fire in the back because, like, I guess Wolverine just has some propane back there.
What is that propane doing there? But I know it. Like, first of all, like, do you need to keep warm? Like, honest question. I feel like you don't.
No.
You know, and then just is that the safest possible way to do that? Like,
no, he's got a trailer. You should store your propane safely in the trailer. That's just common. That's common knowledge.
Yeah. Well, he did lose his memories.
True. Yeah,
He
maybe
lost
he's
his
forgotten all of his driver's ed training.
Lost all of his safety.
Yeah.
Safety training.
So there's a fire, and then Wolverine runs over because, of course, Rogue is stuck by the seatbelt that she was making fun of Wolverine for not wearing.
This is a powerfully anti-seatbelt message in this scene.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, but they do kill more people than they save. I think that the movie's right.
The Wolverine goes up to the tree and like immediately smells Sabretooth, and we've had a lot of conversations about how Sabretooth must smell, and that's just permeating everywhere. Like I'm surprised. It's got to be like when you drive over a skunk. Like on your car, and you have to roll up the windows and turn off the air conditioning. Like that must be what it's like to be in a 2-mile radius of Sabretooth.
Yeah. I actually like how Sabretooth works in this movie, where he's not. They don't give him any lines. Like instead of playing him as kind of a smartass like they do in the Wolverine, they just have him as kind of bestial, you know, and just chose an actor like for how physically imposing they were. But
and they poor guy, they blinded him with those contacts. He literally lost sight for a day because of those contacts.
Yeah. Everyone had terrible contacts in this. There's a great thing with Mystique, which we'll talk about later. Like an awesome little bit of trivia that happened because of her makeup and stuff. That's in like detail of the IMDb for me. So they get into this fight. It's important to note that like at this point, Wolverine and Sabretooth don't seem to have any kind of implied backstory. Like he's just attacking him.
Mm-hmm.
There, and they get in this fight. It's a pretty good fight here. But however, the X-Men show up here. The actual real, you know, the two, you know, Storm and Cyclops show up here, just kind of standing in these outfits, like the black leather outfits that they wear, were made specifically, you know, to not be as colorful as the superhero costumes, you know, that they had. Now, and I don't know if it's modern design sensibilities or anything like that, but they stand out a lot right now for me. Like they look like weird fetish gear to me.
They look like weird fetish gear. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like with the weird lines on them and everything, and it's
All the
just
piping. Yeah.
yeah. It's very odd. And at the time, I thought it was like kind of cool. Like that was the style.
Yeah.
Like that was like the Matrix, right? Like the Matrix kind of started that.
So I just remember thinking it looked cool as well, and it doesn't, however. And this movie, the biggest problem this movie has is with action. Like the way the power is articulated is fine, but the idea that these guys, like we see montages of these characters being trained and stuff and doing really cool stuff, similar to the early comics things, they just forget that they have powers, forget how to use them. They don't know how to fight. Like these guys just kind of stand here and then just use their powers in a line. There's no tactics. There's no like, let's try to flank him. Let's try to surprise him. Let's not announce ourselves before we hit him with a storm. Hit him with a lightning bolt. Like Storm doesn't start charging up her lightning bolt in advance. It's really like the way they fight, specifically Storm and Cyclops. I guess Jean Grey too. Like everybody, all the mainline X-Men fight like shit.
Yeah.
And that's like the big advantage that the Brotherhood have.
I wonder if that's very specific. Like, I wonder if they would do that to try to show this as like the X-Men's first outing or whatever. But they've already got the Jet, like they've already got Cerebro. Like it very much seems like they've been doing this for a while. So I can't imagine it. Yeah, but yeah, Storm just like literally just creates like some snow flurries at Sabretooth, and he gets like blown away. And that seems to be how she uses her powers all the time.
She's so awful in this movie. It reminds me of the way that they with having the Jet and stuff. It's like when you run into podcasters who have like this $5,000 mixing rig, but like nobody listens to them. Like they just started out and they're like, we're gonna need all this stuff. Or you run into like a weird uncle band and they've got wireless mics and like really really nice instruments and stuff like that, and like really really great live performance equipment, but they're playing like their nephew's graduation party.
Yeah, yeah, they've definitely painted the car before they fixed the engine.
Exactly, 100%. So they're real silly at this point, and we're going to talk about them being silly, especially in the Statue of Liberty, because there's really there's 3 action scenes in this movie. So it comes up a lot in the third one. We go to Magneto's lair, where Magneto's wearing his movie outfit.
I love this this. This like glossy, shimmery velvet. I don't know what the hell it's made out of, but it's so ridiculous. It's like he's so committed to the word Magneto. Like, dude, that's the color has nothing to do with the magnetic field.
It's just magenta. He's dyslexic.
Magenta. I can't say Magneto. Yeah, sorry.
It looks like an ambassador on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like every once in a while, a high-ranking Starfleet person will come on that show, and it's like, "What are you wearing?" Like people do not wear that when they're just hanging out. I swear.
We're gonna have to, like, when we do these movies, we're definitely gonna have to have like a fashion segment, because I could probably do about 15 minutes on an outfit that Storm wears towards the end of this movie. We'll get there. Yeah. But yeah, so we see like Magneto in his natural habitat, and he's got like he's just so gratuitous with the use of his powers, right? Like he's just, and I guess it's supposed to be very impressive, like that he can make the balls click back and forth. But like, I thought what was impressive about those balls was that they were perfectly balanced, and that they were, it was physics doing that. If you're just literally doing that with your hand, it's not near as impressive.
Yeah. It's not really the same device, is it? Like,
yeah, like a drinking bird is no fun if you're just literally pushing on the top of the bird every time.
Like you're just dunking a piece of plastic in a coffee cup every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of a visual trick thing. I like it when he does it with doors and stuff. Like he walks through that door and stuff like that. Like that's that reads true to me. The important thing.
There's some cool scenes with the prison cell later that I really like what he does too.
Yeah. I love all that stuff. The important part here is just Sabretooth saying he failed, and the reason why is that they had help. And this is part of the weird kind of misdirect the movie does that's not entirely successful, is that they want you to think Magneto is trying to get Wolverine, and then Magneto's like, Charles, and then we switch back to Xavier, or we switch back to Wolverine, we switch back to the X-Mansion.
Yeah, so here's where we see Dr. Jean Grey, who we saw earlier addressing Congress, now actually doing some doctor shit, and kind of basically examining Wolverine, who has no wounds. He wakes up very quickly and kind of like grabs her by a necklock, throws her down, and then just jets.
Yeah. And, this was originally in an earlier draft of the script. Beast was in the the team, and he would have been this because astute comics readers will know that Jean Grey is not a doctor, and Jean Grey is not particularly well suited early on to talk to Congress. These would have been things that Beast would have done, but they kind of merged those roles when they simplified the movie.
Yeah, you can't afford Kelsey Grammer and Hugh Jackman, and you can't afford all those guys at the same time.
All those tossed salads and all those scrambled eggs.
Yeah. So here's this extended scene of Wolverine like running through the lower levels of the X Mansion, and he stumbles across like a really cool, not cool, but like a really weird display of all of the X outfits, which makes me think that all of the X-Men like changed together
in a hallway.
Yeah,
like
in a hallway, like not in a locker
room.
room. Like, I really want to be there once they change their clothes and put all of their like civilian clothes on the mannequins.
Me too. Yes.
But then Wolverine grabs like, because he's topless and Wolverine can't do anything when he doesn't have a shirt on apparently. So he grabs like an X, like they just have some hoodies hanging around and some sweatshirts.
The brand from the gift shop.
Yeah. Because Xavier has too much money.
You know what they're the way they display clothes and stuff is like how if you have extra outfits of armor in Skyrim, like you get those mannequins and you can just put that on and you just change in and off of it.
Sure.
This
always reminds me of Batman. Like I always think it's really creepy that Batman like makes these suit of armor things, not so that he can get into them quickly, but just so that he can look at them like he is them. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a really weird superhero like fetish to see your outfit over the wall and be like, I am not the Bat, or I am not Cyclops, or whoever the fuck it is.
Right.
Anyway. Well, so Xavier like is screwing with Wolverine's mind, leads him through the school, or leads him to the top of the school, which is actually just a school with some kids running around. And then, I guess I don't really get this. There's a scene here where like the door opens, like you can hear it click, and then Wolverine runs over and opens the door real fast. But like, there's nobody at the door to open it, so I don't. Sure,
yeah,
like whatever.
What's going on there.
Wolverine comes in, and it's just Xavier teaching a room full of mutants, like some physics stuff, and we get a pretty quick cameo of Kitty Pryde, which at the time, like I remember grabbing the dude sitting next to me. I was like, "That's Kitty Pryde! Yeah, that's Kitty Pryde!"
It is. Xavier's really taking a gamble that Wolverine wasn't just going to slice off a bunch of kids' heads. Here.
Seriously,
like he's just kind of like, I'm confident that he'll calm down once he sees a classroom. Why?
And Wolverine should actually be asking, like, why did you think that I wouldn't murder everybody? Like, what do you know about me? But doesn't seem to bother. That doesn't seem to bother him.
Yeah. So the rest of the X-Men kind of come in. Cyclops like tries to shake his hand. That sets up this animosity. They don't like each other for some reason. And one of the things I love is like Xavier starts just exposition like crazy. Like, you were attacked by a man named Sabretooth. He was controlled by Magneto, a very powerful mutant. Like he's just kind of going through, and Wolverine ain't having it. He's just like, "What's a Magneto?" Which I love that line so much.
Yeah, "What's a Magneto" is maybe the best one-liner in this movie
because it's just a stupid name. Like, do you ever run into people who still call him Magneto? Like I don't know why that sounds stupider, but they both sound stupid. But Magneto could be what it was, sounds more like a stage magician from the 1920s, which is like, just taking your power and putting O at the end is what it sounds like. What universe is Magneto as cool as he is with a name like Magneto?
So which one sounds cooler, Gary? Gravelord Nito or Gravelord Netto?
Gravelord Necco wafers.
Yeah. Xavier just expositions all over the place, and you get this great line that of Wolverine being like, "What do they call you, Xavier? Wheels or whatever?" And like that's just fucking great.
It's supposed to be cue ball in the straight, but Hugh Jackman improvised wheels. There's a little bit of ableist.
Oh, I had read that it's Baldy. So
Baldy, yeah, I think you're right, yeah. But they, what do they call you, Baldy? Would be like way worse than cue ball or wheels. Like, yes, my code name is Baldy.
Yes, my mutant power is to not have hair anywhere.
So I'm smooth. Yeah, so the and then we get again exposition done where we're explained the X-Men. This is made up of a couple of actual scenes that are deleted scenes for this movie, which are worth watching. I'm very glad they weren't included. Like they needed to be cut pretty badly, including a very specific lecture that is just a microcosm of what happens in the movie. That is way too on the nose, where they're like, why did the Romans fall to the Christians? And it's because the emperor became Christian, and that's exactly what Magneto is trying to do. And it was way too on the nose. So instead, they took those scenes and turned it into a montage about the school, which I think is actually like pretty effective, even though it does look like something you'd get on a VHS tape in the mail to try to get you to come to the school.
And they returned to this, and did you see that preview going around for X-Men Apocalypse where they literally made like the VHS tape promoting Xavier's School of Mutants? Like that was the perfect tone for that. And then this is okay, like this is fine as a training montage. Like you see the little kid shooting a basketball to himself and teleporting across to catch it, and like the other kid like, no powers, it's not fair. It just tells me that he's gonna be, he's just a tattletale. Like, screw that kid.
Yeah.
But I like seeing like anytime Jean Grey like is holding stuff up, like multiple things in the air, whether it's silverware or like discus plates for Cyclops to shoot out of the air. Like I love all that stuff. So
I like it too, even though it is the thing that makes Cyclops' fighting style so stupid. Like the fact that he just kind of stands and sometimes shoots a laser, when before this it's shown him like being like super effective at things, and here it's like he's really not in action. It's one of those things where like they're trying to show rather than tell, if they're trying to make the X-Men inexperienced, but like it's like the actors didn't get that memo. Like they're they act really confident and everything, like suit up, we have to work as a team, when they hit the bricks later, but like it's not it doesn't actually play out on the screen. So just having a line where it's like, I'm a little bit nervous, I don't know if like one of the things the new movies, the First Class era movies do, is they always show them in the blackboard, like sitting facing each other, seatbelted in, and they always look like kind of nervous about stuff because they're kids. So then when they make stupid decisions, it just makes total sense. And
something that the next movie will do way better is also like that sense of having teams and having like actual strategy and tactics with these teams. Like none of that exists in this movie really. Like there's some times that they split up, but for no real good reason. But in the next movie, like there's actually times where like, okay, you two go over there and take care of objective A, and we're going to go over here and take care of objective B. And the movie does a good job of handling that back and forth. But I guess it probably took them a little while to realize, like, because they're dealing with so much trying to explain what an X-Man is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we go through all of this stuff. I just want to call out real quick because Autumn's going to make me do it. When we watch this together for the first time, there's this scene where Xavier takes Wolverine down into like the stables, and people that know me pretty much knows my wife like rides horses. She has 2 horses, this whole deal, and like we both like paused it and we're like, Xavier, what the fuck are you doing? Like this is an area where like horses are going to essentially live, poop, and shit and eat. Like that's what the horses do in the stables, and you have carpeted it. What?
Good eye on him. I wouldn't notice that like in 1,000 years. Like I'm not being sarcastic. It's like that is a good like to IMDb. Like please point that out as a goof.
Yeah, probably. I can only get about halfway through the IMDb list, like the trivias and the goofs and whatnot, until I just get bored with it. So it might be in there somewhere. But yeah, that's just the most ridiculous example of a horse stable I've ever seen, and like, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we go back to Senator Kelly, who is in front of a kind of a rowdy crowd for just a dude getting on a helicopter, like. People brought out a bunch of signs of like mutants' rights, don't exist or whatever. And like, but he just gets on a helicopter and like flies off ostensibly to like his house or something. I'm not sure where he was going, but we very quickly realize that like something is going wrong here when his assistant gets a little creepy stare going.
This is pretty good. Like I like the assistant kind of leading him in these questions, and we're introduced to Mystique at this point. And this is a one-liner that works out where he says something like something about men like me, and where he's like,
people like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child.
Like this is it's doing a good job of selling the other side, selling a sympathetic viewpoint to the bad guys. They also dispose of a pretty major X-Men antagonist like totally off screen, like because she's supposed to be Gyrick.
Yeah, and he's kind of a deal.
Yeah, he's been dead for months. I replaced him months ago. Oh well, shit. Like,
Yeah.
like okay.
Although, as we see at X-Men 3, they don't mind killing people off screen at all.
Not remotely. Yeah, it's pretty silly, but it's still pretty cool. Mystique, the fact that Mystique had kind of a rise of popularity in the movies, I think makes total sense to me because her power is more interesting in kind of this medium,
And it's very visual, right? Like it's very specifically visual
and really impressive. Like it remains the kind of morphing thing that she does. They could have just done like a Michael Jackson black or white, like but instead of doing that, doing these kind of like these tiles flipping over animation, I think is pretty strong and it's pretty memorable.
There's not much CGI that like holds up for me from like 15, 20 years ago, but like Mystique's changing into other people from this movie works still to this day. Like it's really cool, and immediately she like jumps up and does like crazy kung fu footwork, and I'm all into all of that. Like that just works. Like that, all of that's so cool. Mystique is very awesome in this movie. Watching this made me realize how much I don't really like Mystique in the First Class era movies.
Me either. I don't like her as like a civil rights like freedom fighter. Eventually in the comics she does kind of take that role. Here as kind of, I don't know, I think she's better here as well. There's a touch later that I think is the best like kind of action touch they do later that I want to talk about. But here, I think she's much stronger. Everybody, Wolverine's definitely star of the show here because when we go back to the mansion, everyone's just talking about Wolverine. Like, who's this guy? What's his story?
Well, this is so like fucking rude, by the way. Like Wolverine, like gets like they put him in an MRI machine, which you should not do with a guy with metal bones, by the way. Just for any future doctors out there that don't know how MRIs work, but they put him in this weird machine, take a picture of his bones, walk to a different room, everybody gathers, and just starts talking about all of his personal medical history.
Yeah.
I guarantee you the Xavier School for Gifted Mutants or Gifted Children is not HIPAA compliant whatsoever. They should not be having these conversations without his express permission. And this whole thing was just kind of weird. But you need to know what Wolverine's backstory is. And this is they go through the trouble of like experimentation on mutants. His bones are laced with adamantium, the whole nine.
Yeah. Yep. Which again is useful exposition. It makes sense maybe these characters are talking about it. Back to Magneto's lair where they've kidnapped Kelly. We're going to introduce the Toad here, played by Darth Maul, the Darth Maul guy, who like is very showy. Like Toad's characterization in this movie, I'm fine that he does not, that he doesn't show up for a good long time because he's very like showy and smartassy. And him eating this in front of Senator Kelly just like for funzos. And what's that bird doing in like Magneto's like death?
What is the bird there for?
It's very weird.
You get the feeling that like he just has some bird feed in his pocket, like just waiting for this moment to happen.
He just does it to creep out, girls like putting a worm in their hair. But then we're introduced to like the biggest problem with this movie, which is Magneto's plot, like Magneto's plan here. So like, where did this come from? Like what is this technology? Where did it come from?
Who made it?
Why wasn't it tested? Why any of this? Like this is so stupid.
Why? All of this is so dumb.
Big tech machine that just like alters people's DNA to turn them into mutants is like would be dumb on a comic. Like but for a movie in a more grounded reality, it makes no fucking sense. And it's amazing the way the second one deals with like soldier programming and stuff like that. It's like way more grounded in tropes that we understand to be associated with reality. This is like a big, colorful Silver Age comic thing in the middle of our super gritty 2000s movie. And makes no fucking sense. I hate this machine so much. Like there's some cool things that happen around it. Like the tragedy of what happens to Senator Kelly and stuff, I think is actually kind of good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this as a plan is just like so beneath Magneto. Like he's smarter than this and simultaneously dumber than this because he's not Forge, but he's also he would know this wouldn't work and he would listen when people told him it didn't work. He would test it. Like he's not going to roll the dice on this shit. Unless
his spirit shaman told him to and he wasn't listening or something.
Exactly.
Forge has problems.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know him. Like Forge is not involved. Like Magneto wouldn't have rolled the dice. He would test things out. And just having Forge be there would have been like one, a super fun cameo, and two, would have explained that this was a thing. Like have Forge there, have Forge be like, I'm not totally sure this will work. Magneto will be like, it has to work. Our purpose is true. or something like that. And okay, that's characterization and like covers up this plot hole. I like this thing drives me nuts. And why does Magneto power it? Like, is he literally just spinning those things? Like, is this something that like a truck engine could do?
Yeah, like none of this really said like magnetism to me, and like why does it create? And I realize, and I know people out there are like, guys, it's a comic book movie. Like, there's a dude with claws coming out of his arm, and you're arguing about this, but like, there's a certain level of like base realism that you can kind of get into with this stuff, which is why it's so interesting. Like, claws coming out of somebody's hands, believable. Magneto spinning some rods and like silver
Altering
spider
DNA.
web stuff coming out,
Yeah.
like changing DNA. Like, how does this? None of this shit makes sense. Like, and how does it work for everybody? Everybody's DNA is a little bit like it's yeah. I don't. I'm right with you. Like, I don't. At the time when I saw this back in the year 2000, I feel like we're gonna have to pay Conan O'Brien for it in the year 2000 if we keep saying that. But at the time, I remember thinking like, okay, this is cool. Like, just thinking this was fine. But like, actually trying to critically think about it now and like put those pieces together, yeah, just eye rolling dumb.
Whenever anybody, it's one of my least favorite arguments when somebody says something like, it's a comic book movie, why would you care? Because what they're doing is they're confusing realism with internal consistency. And we're not asking for realism, we're asking for internal consistency. Like, a world has been presented, things that are later presented in the world have to be in line with the world we've been presented. That's what we're asking for. So yes, we're not saying like, oh, this is clearly fiction. Like, but whenever somebody makes that argument, they're like, oh, it's a comic book movie, chill out. They're calling you an idiot who doesn't understand that difference. And I assure you, we're not idiots about this. It is just internally inconsistent. Like, we're
That's
calling
really
out the
good
tone,
yeah.
not the fact that it's like, I can't believe impossible things happen in this movie. Do you mean movies aren't just like someone sitting down a camera and watching the X-Men fight? We know it is just internal consistency. Like, that has been a pet peeve argument of mine for like, I did like a sophomore or like an intermediate creative writing class in college a couple of years ago, and there was a guy in the class his name was PK. In all of his stories, he had a character that had like the P as the first letter and a K as the end. So he'd have all these like self-insert characters that were named things like Prismatic and stuff. And
oh wow! I thought you were gonna go like Paul Kingley or something like
no,
actual
way
initials, but like okay, way worse.
And then that was always his argument. Like, was if anyone would call out something being internally inconsistent, he'd be like, "It's fiction. You just make up whatever you want." And I'm like, no. Like, yes, you can and still be within the umbrella of fiction, but we're not. The purpose of this class, or the purpose of looking at media, is not to just see if something qualifies as fiction, because that is a very low bar. It's whether it's good fiction, and one element of good fiction is internal consistency. Why don't you understand? Why are you a goddamn junior in college and you don't understand this? So, anywho, so he zaps Kelly.
Yeah, he zaps Kelly. Kelly passes out, and then the next scene we're whisked away right back into the X-Mansion, where I guess they've assigned Jean Grey, of all people, to like sort Wolverine's accommodations out. Like, hey Jean, can you go get Wolverine set up in the like a spare room?
Yeah, like women do a lot of emotional labor.
Yep, it's true. So we see them kind of have a moment together. She goes to read his mind. Scott interrupts. There's this obvious love triangle forming between the three of these people that like anybody that knows anything about X-Men knows where it's going, which is fucking nowhere.
It is going nowhere, but I think they actually do a good job of like kind of showing it. And this movie does great job, like kind of we talk about cool Cyclops a lot, like how he has this reputation for being kind of milquetoast and stuff. I think James Marsden does a great job, and I think that the movie does a really good job of making him pretty cool. Like, I think this exchange is good, you know, where like the deleted scene of this is the only deleted scene I wish that they hadn't deleted the extended conversation here, where like you know, Cyclops is like, you know, Wolverine's like, you wouldn't survive a minute in the field, and he's like, what, you've seen action? And like Wolverine gets all quiet because he's, you know, a veteran, excuse me, and Cyclops is like, oh, you don't want to talk about it with me, you know, and he's like, not with you. And like this like kind of verbal kind of back and forth, like the don't steal my girl thing actually works for me. Like, I think this is like kind of a good line, and you know, sells Cyclops pretty well.
You gonna tell me to stay away from your girl?
Well, if I had to do that, she wouldn't be my girl.
Well, then I guess you've got nothing to worry about, do you? Cyclops.
It must just burn you up that a boy like me saved your life, huh? You gotta be careful. I might not be there next time. Oh, and Logan. This stay away from my girl.
As this. So like Cyclops comes off really well in this movie. It's all to make up for how terrible he comes off in 3. So
Yeah. The third movie, he's treated pretty poorly, poor Cyclops. But yeah, so Wolverine goes to take a nap or goes to sleep. Rogue sneaks in his room. I guess the setup here is that like Wolverine was making some noise.
Wolverine's having a nightmare, so Rogue decides to mount him and shake his shoulder. Like,
yeah.
what is this?
Calm down, Suki.
He's having a nightmare. It's okay. Like, he's not like screaming. He's not like clawing the couch or anything like that. He's just like kind of shaking back and forth, remembering being in a Weapon X vat. This is so dumb of Rogue. Like, this makes no sense at all.
And hey, also, just while we're talking about this, like, fuck you, Wolverine, because you have to know you do this pretty much every night. Like, you know you have a tortured 150 years of history. Lock your goddamn door. You're in a school.
Yeah.
Like, anybody could walk in. Like, what if they have a maid? You probably didn't ask.
Just say like, hey, leave me alone when I'm sleeping.
Put the
put
the sock on the doorknob. That's all I'm saying.
Between 9 and 5 is Wolverine's time.
Wolverine After Dark, is that what we're going for?
Exactly. Like, don't mess around, because he's probably like, he just also got pretty, like, he's very attracted to Jean Grey. Like, there's totally a different version of this where he's like literally cranking it. It doesn't happen, but he could have been that we see, but he could be in like a crank trance and have stabbed.
Oh God! There's a hard and fast rule: you never wake anyone from a crank trance.
No,
never wake anyone from a crank trance.
For anybody involved, like, you don't want that. So he wakes up in a stabbing frenzy, and this is actually kind of like surprisingly violent and kind of effective too. Like, it's just shit. The first time I saw it.
This kind of took me aback when I saw it for the first time. I was like, oh shit! Like, even knowing immediately what would happen, right? Like, you kind of figured out. But like him stabbing her through the chest, you see her bleeding from the back. She reaches out, and he's kind of freaking out because at this point we don't even really explain Rogue's powers. Like, the only thing that's really we've seen is the horror movie intro, and then her saying in the truck with them, like, people touch me and get hurt.
Yeah,
so
we think she just like drains, like, hurts them. She doesn't think we take their powers. They also a really great little bit of acting here from Hugh Jackman, where he starts saying help. Like, I love him being confused and helpless. Which doesn't happen very much, but him just kind of being really scared about what happened, like, that really worked for me.
So yeah, we go back to Senator Kelly, who woke up in a basically what looks like a prison cell and starts kind of squishing his face through these iron bars, which is really weird.
He's getting liquid powers, and like, again, this actor's really good. He sells this kind of terror. Like, he's scared of what he's become, but he's also scared of remaining here and what they're going to do to him. And like, really, honestly, if what they're going to do to him is let him be a senator, like, pass legislation, but as a mutant,
Magneto definitely doesn't have like a communications major, right? Because he could have just probably explained this, like, no, we're going to change you, but everything's going to be okay.
There's a really good line delivery here too. I think where this might have happened before this, when Magneto was talking to him, but he's like, what have you done to me? What have I become? He's like, you're us. Like, he kind of has this like lilt to it that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So Kelly like sluices out through the prison cell, like, slurps on out. Sabretooth can't hold on to him. He slips out of his grip. So Magneto leaves him in the cage, and Sabretooth does not like that.
And just real quick, like, as Magneto and Sabretooth are walking to the prison cell, you get this really cool thing that I love with Magneto's powers, which apparently he's just stashed some like square disc of metal. And then anytime he needs a bridge, he just pulls them from the closet and like makes a bridge. Otherwise, like, this reminded me of the what's the cell, the prison cells in the Vale, the Game of Thrones. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's a prison cell that like just is like, you could just leave it open. Like, it seems to be like high up in the air on some sort of fucking waterfall meteor thing. I don't know where this is in the world. Yeah,
like, where is this? Yeah, absolutely. Like, he's just, I thought I'd install solar panels, Charles, but it turned out to be too much work. So here they are. Shink, 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 shink. Yeah. So
go ahead.
The scene as Kelly escapes is really great. This is the last scene they shot for the movie, and is really horrifying. Like, Kelly like washing up on the beach, as this kind of like gilled, blobby, like puffy thing, and everyone just being terrified of him.
Yeah, this whole beach freaks out, and you get a lot of like really funny like guy putting suntan lotion on his girl's back, just keep squeezing it, the kind of moments of like,
Yeah, like a guy like puts down his sunglasses at some point. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves is there.
This beach just got real.
Yeah, so and then we go back to the Xavier. This movie moves around quite a bit, and actually, for as many like locations and stuff as we see, like it flows pretty well together. Like I feel like for as like because it's a lot of it's just people talking to one another, but it still kind of works. Like you know what's happening, you can kind of keep along with the story.
Yeah, it's coherent. Like for sure.
Rogue and Bobby meet outside the school and sit on a bench together, and then Bobby, who we have met earlier, we kind of glossed over that, but we did meet like Iceman and Pyro and like some other mutants in the school, and
Jubilee.
It's very obvious that Iceman has a crush on Rogue all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's something that will play out more in the second one, but it's just kind of a cameo.
But he tells her like, "Oh shit, you fucked up. You used your powers on Wolverine. Xavier's pissed. Like you need to leave." He's talking about like calling the law, and I'm like,
"You never use your
from
mutant powers on another mutant."
Yeah, which. Rogue is like one of the people unique in that school who's actually seen the X-Men shoot Sabretooth. Like, she should know you absolutely can, in time of emergency, use your mutant powers against another mutant.
Yeah, to save someone's life.
But she's also like a little girl. Like she's a high school girl. So like not a little girl, but she's like a high school girl.
Yeah, and then she runs away, and this is like the best part of Magneto's plan. Right, like this is the second act, kind of second action scene. This movie has 3 action scenes, one for each act. The second one is the most successful and least stupid of them. Like this is actually planned pretty well.
My only issue with this one is it didn't seem like anybody knew what Rogue's power was. So, like obviously Magneto was hunting for her like way back at the beginning of the movie when she was in Canada. Like, why? Like, did he build the device and then realize, oh shit, the device is going to drain all my powers and I need a mutant that has this specific power set? Or like, and then how did he know that it was Rogue's? Like, that's the part that like that's
exactly what happened, but there's nothing to explain it. Like he 100% just needed someone to sacrifice who would have his powers and do the thing. But like there's nothing there's like a missing scene where that happened. And it's like the movie follows. It doesn't need that. It just becomes one of those things where if you like gloss your eyes over a little bit, it makes sense, and if you start thinking about it doesn't.
So like Dark Souls 3 lore. Okay,
exactly. Gotcha. This is the Dark Souls 3 of X-Men 1. Yeah.
Sorry, listeners.
I apologize for nothing. So they use Cerebro. We're introduced to the thing, which again, one of my absolute favorite lines of this movie.
It certainly is a big round room.
So good. Like, do you think that Hugh Jackman just was the first time he saw it and that was like ad-libbed? Like...
Oh, absolutely. Right. He's like, they probably made him redo it too, because he said it the first time in Australia with that Australian accent. Whoa. But yeah, they use Cerebro and to find Rogue, who is at a train station. And then they send, at this point, I believe like Wolverine like wants to go by himself, or maybe that happens later, but Wolverine takes off, I think is what happens. And then Xavier sends Storm and Cyclops to the train station to get Rogue. They go down to the car museum of Jay Leno. Like, I mean, just so many cars down there. Like, there's just so much like machinery, and I know he has money, but like at a certain point, you got to pay insurance on every single one of those, registration, tags.
Anyway. These are my X-Men, and I bought this mansion from Jay Leno.
Yeah, X-Men in cars getting coffee.
Yeah, I forgot about the car museum at the bottom of Xavier. It's really good.
And it exists in the cartoons, right? Like, we've seen this before where Wolverine, like, cuts the top off and makes the convertible. It's the same exact spot. Like, it's the same place.
It's really important that the X-Men have, like, 10 to 20 classic cars.
Yeah, just hanging around. Sure.
And this leads into a comedy bit because Wolverine stole Cyclops' bike. Like, hotwired. Like, Cyclops is like, where's my bike? And then it cuts to, like, Wolverine having a pretty good time on this motorcycle.
Yeah,
like,
he like flips the nitro switch, right?
He hits the Fast and Furious button, and he has this shit-eating grin on his face that's like, a girl's life is at stake, Logan.
Yeah, I do like, because I had the thought like right after this of how Wolverine got there so fast, and I was like, oh, duh, they just showed me that. He's literally on a nitro motorcycle.
He's a supersonic super speed bike. But him having that little smile on his face of like, whoa, this I can get into, I think is very, very funny.
I like how they've made the motorcycle a recurring character too, because it shows up in 2, like, and there's like dialogue about it. It's very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, they show up. Oh, at this point, we actually go back to Mystique. Earlier, I don't know that we specifically called it out, but that actually, Bobby, when he ran Rogue off, was actually Mystique. We see like the gold glint of the eyes. So now we see Mystique sneaking around in the X-Mansion. She breaks into Cerebro and like injects some, chloroform, like some green shit in it to poison
Magneto
somebody.
science.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Like he's a chemist as well as a super scientist.
How much better would it have been if this scene had been like reversed, where we got the Cerebro scene, and that would have explained where they got Rogue from, and then you see her poison. You know what I'm saying? Like to see that. Anyway, doesn't matter. Who cares? So we see we see Mystique poison Cerebro, and then we go to the train station where there's this funny little interaction between Cyclops and this kid that was apparently totally unscripted, where the kid just had a huge crush on Cyclops and could not stop himself from smiling. So I thought that was a really nice touch.
I think it's a great scene. I think it's really cute.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, really cute.
And
I think that scene really shows you like just how fucking bulky Cyclops' glasses are. Though, like it's like he's got a ViewMaster, like one of those things strapped to his face.
The X-Men's plan to look for Rogue is to ask the train station person, let's get in our uniforms, like go to the train station and just see, like, have you seen this girl? Like, let your fingers do the goddamn walking, dude. Like, you could call.
Imagine the poor dude like sitting behind the glass when white-haired, white-eyed Storm shows up in full black leather and starts asking you about teenage girls. What do you do?
Like, what don't you do? That's so. This is so silly, their plan, and they get so fucking owned here for people who are supposed to be. And again, like the way this is, like the Brotherhood know how to fight. The X-Men apparently don't, even though we've seen them train for montage. Because the guy that we do the thing where the ticket booth guy sees something come up behind Storm, and it's Sabretooth who grabs her neck. And so nobody will finish anyone off in this movie. Like, this becomes a weird problem where, like, a lot of times somebody will disable somebody and then just stand there. And it keeps happening, and I don't get it. I'm not saying, like, I understand the X-Men don't kill, but they tie up, or they disable, or they knock out. And no one does that. Like, what is Sabretooth's end plan here? Like, he's just going to hold her until she can get out. It's super silly.
Yeah, like, he should be, like, literally crushing her windpipe. But what ends up happening is Toad jumps onto the ceiling and uses his gross tongue to like rip Cyclops' visor off, and he blows a hole into the top of the
I love
train
that.
station.
It's really smart. That is a good way to disable Cyclops.
Make him close his eyes. I'm like, we got you.
You're blind now. Super good.
Yeah. And then but unfortunately, being exposed to the elements, now Storm can call down the lightning on. I love that Sabretooth has like a really good dental plan. Like he's got just imagine like Sabretooth with like the growling and the black eyes, like, oh yeah, my left molar is kind of hurting, doc. Like, can you put a cap on it for me? So yeah, she shoots light into he goes flying, and then this kind of gets jumbled up in my head a little bit.
It's still they're just kind of fighting, like that's what they did. That's what they want to do, is disable them. I can't remember what happens to Storm at this point. She gets disabled somehow. Maybe like rubble falls on her or something like that. I don't remember, because when we cut to the train, because Wolverine got there first, he got on the train with Rogue and talks her back into coming back to the mansion, but then Magneto shows up. So Magneto very tactically disabled the other X-Men and just thinks he has to get Rogue. Shows up, and this is a really cool scene where he literally just peels apart the train as he's walking there. There's a cool little bit of IMDb trivia where like Wolverine, his reaction to that is real, because he thought he was just going to rip the door off.
Wow.
At this point, and he did not know that the train was going to literally split open like a banana peel. This is an awesome power play. Like Magneto just being like, that metal doesn't go through your whole skeleton, does it? Like, you are literally the least effective person to me of all time.
And it comes up again and again anytime Wolverine goes up against Magneto. Like, it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
that is
like anybody.
Wonderful payoff in the end of the Grant Morrison run, where like Magneto is at his absolute weakest and like is super, really, really distracted, and Wolverine finally like takes his, is pushed too far and actually takes his shot and cuts off Magneto's head. Like it is, it's like, oh, if he wasn't, it kind of justifies all of Magneto kind of teasing him about that for years and years, because if he didn't have complete control over Wolverine definitely would have killed him many times over.
Mm-hmm. And this is where we realized that Magneto was not on the hunt for Wolverine. He was actually on the hunt for Rogue, which I can't imagine anybody watching this movie and not figuring that out until this point. Like anybody, I guess I say anybody, like maybe 13-year-old Jeremy wouldn't have picked up on those clues just yet, but like
20
literally anybody. Yeah. 20, like any kind of movie acknowledged knew this little twist, quote unquote, was coming.
Yeah.
And what follows is probably like the coolest scene in this movie.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah. This is the thing I always think back to, as far as kind of big power scenes.
So we have Magneto, Sabretooth, and Toad. Toad is carrying Rogue. They walk outside, and a group of police force has gathered outside this train station full of, like, they brought cars. They kind of set up in a perimeter to block. They don't know what the fuck is going on. They just know mutants are there.
Yeah.
They draw guns on Magneto and his crew, and Magneto quickly just takes the guns away, flips them back, and then like floats them back up to their heads, which is. This comes up again and again in these movies, including the First Class era, and like just works almost every time for me. Like it's just great. It's so frightening. It's scary as hell. Cool like power. I was in control and had this power, and now you took it away from me, and I'm vulnerable now. Like that is fantastic. Yep.
And then just the whole, Magneto's wearing his helmet, which Xavier can't get into. I guess there's an earlier thing where they say that like help build Cerebro. So that's his invention, pedigree and stuff. And he made his helmet and everything, but it's still a little bit silly. So Xavier controls, Toad, and Sabretooth says like, let the girl go. And this is like an extended game of chicken. Like Magneto is just like, come out, Charles. Why don't you come out and face me? And Xavier saying it doesn't have to be like this, et cetera, et cetera. And, Magneto wants it more. Like Magneto is willing to sacrifice all these humans, for this, and lets the bullets fly. Or one of the guns, but catches the bullet right before it hits the cop, and it like shows it's like digging into his forehead. It's like close
enough, tiny bead of blood is coming out, and it's so good. Yeah,
not actually burst it. And he's like, these people will die. You have to let me go. And then they do. They like Xavier backs down, and they get away.
Because Xavier's not going to let anybody die.
No,
like, he's just not going to. He would rather a teenage girl be kidnapped by the hands of the worst person that he knows,
exactly,
than a cop to take a bullet in the line of duty.
Failing now in order to succeed later.
I feel like Magneto is old enough at this point that like just if Sabretooth had just like gave him a solid shot in the kidneys, he would have just crumpled.
Oh, totally. Like
story over, right?
Also, presumably Xavier got there so he drove up with Jean Grey and Storm and Cyclops. Why? Like if he was going to go, why didn't he go with Storm, or he got there with Jean Grey after Storm and Cyclops? If he was going to go there, why didn't he just go with Storm and Cyclops? It's not like your mind reading super telepath could be useful in finding somebody.
Yeah,
pretty silly. That
the most important part though is that this looks cool.
Yeah, exactly. Like they couldn't bring they had to arrive in 3 phases, but if they'd all work together, and I guess that's part of what they're trying to learn with this last little bit, but that doesn't work out perfectly anyway. So they get there. Wolverine has a great line where it's like, I'm gonna look for, go find her, and he's like, how? And he's like, look, I'm just gonna
right before this. I
just
want to call out real quick that like the way that Magneto and company leave is that Mystique lands the helicopter they stole from the fucking Senate in the middle of this field, and it literally has United States of America. It's like basically Air Helicopter 1, right? Like it's Copter 1. It lands this motherfucker in the middle of the field. They pile up, and then nobody bothers to follow the helicopter. Like a helicopter doesn't move extraordinarily fast, especially ones that are used to carrying senators around. Like
it's got magnet powers. He's
sure,
propelling it with
maybe he's just floating it with magnet powers. How do they work?
He took it in his workshop and did a couple of improvements. The off camera, like it's got a
off camera. Forge built this helicopter.
Nitro boost.
Yeah, so we go back, and then there's that scene where Wolverine wants to storm off, and like, oh, how are you gonna find her? Like, well, I'm gonna look. Like, okay, like where? Also, like that, like Wolverine was basically he was totally done in the fight scene, and then got up, got Cyclops' bike, and said, I'm gonna go back to the mansion. That's where I need to go right now. Yeah. So yeah, he tries to leave, and then Kelly is at the door, and that's when we see Kelly. Senator Kelly shows back up, and he's not in great shape at this point. He's kind of like melty and gooey.
His body is rejecting the mutation, which like I don't know. There's a great little like this is trying to have a characterization moment with Storm, where he's like, he's dying. He grabs her hand, and like I like this, which are unpleasant. And he's just, do you hate us? And she's like, sometimes because I fear you. And they have their like, we're not so different after all moment. And then fucking Kelly like melts.
Just
turns into a puddle.
Yeah.
It's so gross, man. Can you imagine like what kind of poor, like which X-Man do you think gets the job of cleaning Senator Kelly off their sterile operation table?
Cannonball, get the mop. We need you.
I'm not vulnerable while I'm cleaning. I had no idea what like the poor sop who has to do this, but it's so gross. It's just like, this was you, and now it's like, and there's no way it's like texturally and stuff. It's like pretty liquidy, but I imagine it being like KY.
It kind of looks like that consistency, right? Like KY, like to the point where you've boiled it. Like, not that I've ever done that, but I would imagine that's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. It's fucking gross.
Before he melts, though, we do get the scene where Xavier actually reads his mind and figures out the last part of the plot, so that now Xavier knows what Magneto's doing. They very quickly figure out what they have Rogue for because of the power transfer. He's going to use Rogue. He's going to sacrifice Rogue so that he can make this thing happen. I think they even figure out that he's on Ellis Island, so that we know some Statue of Liberty shit at this point.
Yeah, so they know where to go.
Throughout the movie, they've been kind of hinting at this stuff by showing like Toad spray painting like a torch green. We'll get there. I'm going to save my Statue of Liberty stuff here for a minute, but
we're going to get there for a lot of this. Like it is the Statue of Liberty is where we're going to be for a little while, and there's none of this is good.
Yeah,
not one thing of it is okay.
Xavier uses Cerebro to try to track down Rogue or any of these mutants, which I feel like at this point he should just have implanted with some sort of GPS device. Like, you just got to do that, Xavier. If you're going to run a terrorist organization, like, go all in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he's poisoned. He goes out. Jean Grey tries to Cyclops is there and is like, I'll take care of all of them, Charles. Yeah. Like, dial it down a minute, Psych. Just chill out.
Jean runs to Cerebro to try to use it. She's never used it. She's not a strong telepath. Cyclops tries to stop her. Cannot do it. We get this little we move to this gathering at Ellis Island where we see where everyone are, all the world's leaders that are going to be turned into water, turned into KY golems.
Yeah. And then the X-Men have this like group meeting with this, like, and I guess they're just making up technology at this point, but like this is so like Shi'ar technology to me, like this weird like thing that he can make mountain spots. You know what I'm saying? Like their little tactical planning room. Yeah. And this is what I wanted to talk about, like with the fashion don'ts of the X-Men. Like, fucking Storm is dressed up like, I swear to God, it's like an 80s print of a African landscape. Like it looks like somebody took a giant picture of like a sun setting over an African field and just wrapped it on this like tight T-shirt and put her in it. It's ridiculous. I'll see if I can try to find a picture of it.
They just had to have some way of showing that she was from Africa, because Halle Berry sure as fuck wasn't going to do an accent or anything. Like Halle Berry can't be expected to act in this movie. So
the only thing she did was demand that she her eyes get CGI'd because she saw everyone else having problems with the contact.
That's like, oh, you mean you want me to do that thing to me? I'm Halle Berry. Like, you don't get to
do you know who I am?
Like, to play your stupid superhero movie. Like, but she's so fucking flat and bad in this. Yeah. Like, there's no life to her lines or anything. Even when she's watching him die, she looks mildly like annoyed more than anything when she watches Kelly die. Like, she's the worst. Halle Berry is the worst actress and worst casting that we've had in this entire series, I think.
So now the X-Men, Wolverine gets a uniform. We all,
it's one of mine.
Yeah.
We all be like a foot too tall. Like, did we not get the scene where they forced Jean Grey to hem it? Like, Jean Grey, after done finding Wolverine a room, can you hem this uniform and then maybe
we're gonna need you to
give me like 6 grilled cheeses.
I like how IMDb is filled with like height differences between Cyclops and Wolverine at all times. Like, that's what all these people seem to be concerned about, is like, well, Wolverine looks taller. He's not supposed to. I'm like, this dude.
Comics fans.
Like, yeah, comics. They fly over to Ellis Island. There's a weird bit where Cyclops asks Storm to provide them some cover. Storm just like summons a bunch of fog out of nowhere, which 100% absolutely alerts Magneto to what was going on. Oh, weird weather is here. I wonder what's happening. But they roll up, and at this point of the movie, once we get to Ellis Island, like, and I think you mentioned this at some point, but like, boy, does everybody get some one-liners. Like, this seems like they saved all of their like terrible puns and everything for this like next 10 or 15 minutes of this movie.
It's I think this is when it's supposed to be kind of fun, right? Like, I think that's the idea, is like, oh, this is when the movie gets fun. It's like the movie has been pretty serious at this point. There are a couple of jokes. The X-Men can be fun, but like, this is when the stakes should be ramping up and not ramping down, you know. And these everyone kind of taking things not seriously doesn't contribute to that sense of escalating action at all.
The movie has done a very good job of actually kind of giving me a sense of the stakes at this point. Like, I don't want all of the world leaders to be melted in New York. Like, that's not going to be a great thing. I don't want Rogue to die.
Stupid, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, what should like? So this is the epicenter of Magneto being characterized in a really shitty way, because like, Magneto, I don't believe that he would sacrifice somebody like another mutant to do this thing. Like, that's a false premise for this character. Like, I don't think he would do that with all of his greater good, you know. We've said this 1,000 times on the show about the cartoon, and the comic is like, Magneto loves mutants more than he hates humans, and that's why he's not a pure supervillain, you know. Yep. But once, a little bit later, I'm just gonna say it now because it literally happens, but it's part of the big thing. It's like, once somebody explains to him that this doesn't work, he would stop. You know, like, this would have been a golden. What they do in the second one is they kind of put them together. They could have done this in the first one by having like the machine out of his control at that point or something, or like
have him work too weak to stop it, and trying to tell the X-Men on how to stop it. Like, oh shit, I didn't realize it was going to kill everybody. Yeah,
because that's not, he's not like a, you know, that's not him. You know, that doesn't make any sense for his characterization, and it's like they just needed to be more uncomplicated or something to make it palatable. But it's really lame. Like, his whole thing here, him sacrificing Rogue, doesn't make any sense to me. And he's like, you know, yes, I'm very sorry. If there were any other way, it's like, nah, you invented a DNA scrambler out of nothing. Like, there's another way. Like,
yeah, like, I mean, it has to be done right now. Like, or do you have cancer? Like, are you dying?
Your plan A is to make this thing, put it in the torch of the Statue of Liberty, and zap the world's leader at this conference. Like, that's literally the first thing you came up with. Like, if this is plan A, I don't understand.
So what is the timeline here? Have they, because there's a scene where we see Mystique piloting a boat to get to Ellis Island. That's obviously like they're bringing their cargo, right? Like, they're bringing their like device to Ellis Island. Mm-hmm. Sabretooth like kills a guard, and then there's a scene where Toad like literally squashes a dude to death, which is really dumb.
Mario stomps him.
Yeah, he totally Goomba stomps him. Like, so if they haven't brought the device to Ellis Island before the party starts, why is it dressed up like the Statue of Liberty? Like, you could have just like brought it over there and done it in the middle of, you know what I'm saying? Like, do it underneath the party. Like, it just, none of this shit makes any sense whatsoever.
I don't know why it needs to be above them or on like the symbol. And again, like, it wouldn't have been cool, but you could have had like, you know, Toad be like, why are we doing this here? And him just be like, it has to be a symbol of US, you know, strength turned against them, Charles.
I feel like this is just a big Liberty, like making sure the Statue of Liberty gets its point in the movie. Like, you know, this is like the Statue of Liberty cartel.
Yeah. Like, listen, it's been a long time since Ghostbusters 2. People forgot about that big old lady. So they show up. You know, Wolverine puts on the uniform, as we said. Blah blah bloop. And then they get this kind of extended fight in the halls of like the gift shop of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, like the halls and the back, like the back alleys.
So all this stuff, almost all this stuff sucks. Mystique shows up as Wolverine, and they get kind of separated to fight. The one thing I like about this is that they look the same. Like, she's disguised as him, and you can see which one is which just based on their fighting style.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
really
why
like
I like
that.
this fight scene. Yeah.
There's a great moment where they match claws and Wolverine's cut through because they're real, and she screams because it cuts off like part of her claws. Like, what part of Mystique is that? Whoa.
Yeah.
Like
That's her hand puppet. You've got hand puppets, front puppets, back puppets.
So that fight actually I think is very cool up until the part
I also,
where
real quick, I just also like that she kind of kicks the shit out of him. Like, he's like just like in berserker mode, but she's actually kind of holds her own against him. Like, Mystique doesn't have like unnatural powers. Like, she's just a blue chick that turns into other people. Like, but she's like trained herself to the point where she can kick Wolverine's ass, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, it's a good, and she's psyching him out, super, super cool. Eventually, however, it's super stupid. Like, everything that's cool about this whole section gets undercut because the reason he wins is because she kicks him in the balls. And don't do that. Like, don't call Marty McFly a chicken. Like, it's so stupid. Like, okay, that's what does it. These other
I let you buy with Chekhov's balls earlier in this episode, but I just wanted to let you know it did not go underappreciated.
Okay.
Chekhov's balls is like one of number one. It's a very dangerous STD. Protect yourselves while you're out there. But also as a literary device, very, 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 very good.
It's an effective thing. I took that. I told you I took that intermediate class.
Yeah, it's Chekhov with a silent P at the beginning and a silent K at the end.
These other pairings are worse though. Like the Toad versus everybody thing here is
yeah, because Magneto has taken Sabretooth thinking like Sabretooth's going to protect me when I'm all weak and everything.
Yeah, so
and Toad just kind of proceeds to kick the rest of the team's ass. Like, it's kind of silly and ridiculous. Like at one point. Yeah, like he's flipping around and he kind of pushes Storm, who is completely ineffectual, down an elevator shaft. There's almost a neat moment where he jumps at Jean Grey and she kind of grabs him in midair, and then he spits goo on her face.
Then what?
Yeah,
like, there's a full he jumps at her. Jean Grey, the Phoenix, like paralyzes him in the air, and then kind of looks around like she wants someone to tell her line. Like, it is like 3 seconds of her just like, what is your end game? Like, disable him. Like, I understand you don't kill, but tie him up in something. Like, Jesus
that is
Christ.
a girl that is very used to having Xavier in her head at all times.
like, oh, I don't know, Cyclops won't tell me what to do, or Xavier. Like, it drives me up the wall, because then he like hawks a loogie in her face, which is like, ugh. I admit it's like kind of scary and like she's suffocating, because the Brotherhood are playing for keeps, but it's such a long pause while everyone gets used to this situation of the one time she uses her powers in this movie, or 2 times she uses, it's so stupid. And then the way he got rid of Cyclops was to push him in a room and close the door. And Cyclops waits like a full minute and a half before blasting his way out. Yeah. It's all of this sucks. This sucks so bad.
And don't forget that during all of this, like, Toad is dancing around like he's a fucking idiot.
God.
He's like Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's exactly like, where does he get all those wonderful toys? Like, he's that dude to it, like spinning around with like a metal bar as a staff. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous.
It's like somebody told him that this was the Toad movie.
Yeah, this poor bastard.
He's just like, everyone's gonna want to buy me action figures,
Buy me action figures. But Storm comes back up the elevator, and this is where the famous terrible line about what happens to a Toad, et cetera.
I don't want to let this movie off the hook. Not yet, because he kicks her and beats her up like down the hall first, right? This happens like he beats the crap out of her where she just does nothing but back up with her arms up. Or is that before the elevator shaft? Like the fight before this, she makes no attempt to do anything.
Yeah, that was before. That was how she gets kicked into, and then she like floats up, and then like,
I have powers.
Like, yeah, like duh, I should be able to use. And does this thing where, like, this is just exactly what she did at the very beginning of the movie with Sabretooth, where she just makes air move a certain direction, and like Toad is like, oh no, it's real windy all of a sudden, guys.
Uh-oh. It's windy on top of the Statue of Liberty up in the air. But the first part where he's like just kicking her and she's just like, I don't know what to do. Like, she's looking around for someone to tell her line. Like, nobody knows how to react to being punched. And like, I'm not an X-Man. If I get punched, I'm going to run or fight back or like do something. I'm not just going to back away until like just keep getting kicked in the face by a martial artist. Like,
I'm going to use my God-given Second Amendment right.
Exactly. It's the fucking statue doctrine. Like, these people invade me. shoot him in the face.
Yeah. I'm not going to bow and heal and let you buff. I'm going to kick your ass.
It's I was playing Dark Souls for the show to refresh for recording tomorrow, and I was fighting Lothric, and Brayton was like, "Why is your character just watching this cutscene where he comes down and heals him?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's a pretty good point. Like, I should probably go up and backstab this guy, right? Like,
sure,
this is
yeah." That's Storm to a T of like, why don't you ever use your powers like in a normal way?
She thinks it's a cutscene, like, and it's not.
Like, and this whole thing where she starts blowing wind and like again, oh my god, it's windy. Like it's just like Toad is like, oh man, there's some tchotchkes flying at my face. What am I gonna do? Eventually, she blows them out the window, but it like takes 27 minutes.
And then she does the lightning line.
Yeah, he grabs the rail with his tongue, and then she fries the tongue. And I love in the IMDb, by the way. Did you see the would Toad have survived? And like, forget that he's actually in the second and third movie, but like, someone was like, well, if we assume a height of 47.62 feet, and he's fallen at 9.82 meters per second, then but you also have to consider that Toad is a mutant, and he could have like hardened conditioning. And he can maybe survive that longer. And I was like, dude, he's in X-Men too. Like, you can just look at the next movie.
It's a really long paragraph.
It's a really long paragraph.
It's definitely written by Ray Park. Like, the guy who played Toad definitely wrote that response, trying to convince the people to let him into the second movie.
That was a letter drafted to Bryan Singer, just with the front and the back removed. Here's the reason, I think.
So the Toad struck by lightning line, the kind of so this is one of the two lines that was survived from the Joss Whedon cut, and there are various defenses for it. The one that actually makes sense is that they cut out a lot of Toad's dialogue that contextualize it, where like Toad says stuff like, "Do you know what happens when a Toad does this?" and like presents a bunch of Toad facts, I guess.
Sure.
You know, and then she brings up what happens if a Toad is struck by lightning, but it's a bad line. There's nothing that redeems it, but it's also just Halle Berry's like super flat delivery, you know, like, and to be fair to her, like, hasn't gotten very much cool stuff to do in this movie, and the movies never treat Storm very well. Like, she never gets anything really cool to do. Yeah. So like, I could see her just kind of like, okay, this is my cool one line, you know, I get to interact with this tennis ball on a stick that's going to represent the CGI Toad when this happens. I need to look really angry at this tennis ball, but it's a terrible line. Like, it is one of the worst lines in cinema for reasonable. Like, it is that it deserves that.
I would pay a not small amount of money to be able to ask Halle Berry where Storm is from, like in 2016. Like, where do you think Storm is from? Like, I guarantee you she's going to say like New Jersey. Like, she has no idea. She has no clue. I don't think she read any of the like, you don't have to read the comics. You're an actress. I don't care. Like, I'm not trying to say like you didn't abide by the character. Like, I'm not trying to be that guy, but like, just like a little gravitas.
She just doesn't give a shit, and it like comes through in her performance, which like that's the problem. It doesn't matter what she actually knows or cares about. It's just whether it comes through, you know.
So this removes Toad from the equation. So all we really have left with is Mystique. At this point, I believe this is the point where you get your second line, right? Like, this is where Wolverine rolls back up. Cyclops is woken up from his nap and has saved Jean Grey by shooting the goo off her face so she can breathe again. Wolverine shows up and he's like, and you know, Cyclops is like, how do I know it's you? And Wolverine's like, you're a dick. And Cyclops is like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And I'm like, sure. I mean, like, maybe with that conversation you were talking about with the deleted scene with like the extended back and forth, that would have made a little bit more sense. But as of now, like, there's been like a weird resentment thing, like one of those like instant distrust thing, but I don't really feel like they've gotten to the level of name calling that would deserve to be able to say that, oh yeah, that's our secret code word is when we call each other motherfucker. Like, I don't think that works at all. Yeah.
I mean, I buy this a little bit better, you know, but it does feel like it's from a different movie.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and it's so hackneyed for them to literally do the which one do I shoot? You know, thing. Like, that's like such a bad Saturday morning cartoon thing.
Actually, I think I got a little ahead of myself, because right after Rogue zaps Toad, that's when we see Wolverine just standing there sniffing the air, and Rogue shows up and he turns around and Storm rolls up behind him and is like, we got to join up the team, and he's like, there's only one problem, you're not in the team, and stabs her in the stomach. So then he joins up with Jean Grey, and everybody kind of comes together again.
Yeah. The they get together again for this really, really stupid finale of them getting Magneto just wipes the floor with them because like what's the even point of the rest of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants? Like he's fucking Magneto.
It's really a situation of like Trump and all of his hanger-ons, right? Like Magneto is Trump, and everyone else is just trying to get a dollar out of his pocket. Like that's because he could just do this by himself.
So Magneto straps them all into the gravitron, on the wall with big metal bars, like miscellaneous bars that they have in this thing, and he takes off, leaving Sabretooth to kind of watch them. And so one, like you're Magneto, like just throw them into the water or something like that. But like two, the competence of Magneto over the rest of these guys is just unreasonable. He takes Cyclops' visor off.
Gives it to Sabretooth, which is not a great idea.
No, and Jean Grey.
Why would you give that dude anything?
He apparently knows everything about how Rogue's powers work, but know nothing about Jean Grey. And Jean Grey does not use telekinesis to do anything here. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, take his helmet so when Professor Xavier shows up, he can fix it. Or you can, because you are a telepath too. Or
Jean literally
Grey
just trip him when he's walking and give him a concussion.
Yeah, exactly. Like fall out of the statue. Like Jean Grey is the ultimate Magneto counter because she can take off his helmet and zap his brain. That's all it takes for Magneto. So this is real stupid. This is trying to teach us the X-Men learning teamwork. Because they all have to work together. Like Wolverine cuts himself loose to distract Sabretooth or what have you, until eventually, while Sabretooth is distracted, Jean Grey puts the visor there to angle his blast into zapping Sabretooth.
Yeah, and that's how he finally get rid of Sabretooth.
Face. No problem.
Well, the whole thing was like he gave it to Sabretooth, and then Wolverine and Sabretooth have this extended fight sequence where you think like even when watching it this time, I was like, why is Wolverine like so focused on Sabretooth right now? And it's really like Wolverine is just literally trying to get the visor back into that room so that we can do this scene. And there's that really, at the time I thought it was super cool thing where Sabretooth throws Wolverine and Wolverine reaches out with his claws that literally cut through everything.
It does his Spider-Man pose.
And does the little flip. Yeah. And that's, oh boy, that does not hold up very well. Yeah.
So that's how they're getting free of Sabretooth. We switch to the actual, the device with Rogue, as Magneto makes her, straps her into the thing. She's got his powers. She's starting to do the thing. And they're like trying to shoot, they're like, when do I shoot? Oh, I'll hit her. I don't have a shot. This is such false tension. This whole section with like Cyclops being like, I've got a shot. And then Jean saying, wait, what is he waiting for? Like literally like what's going to change that is going to make this better? Because like Wolverine gets up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Wolverine gets up there, they shoot him up there with telekinesis, and he like distracts Magneto, but he's still just stuck to the wall. So there's nothing that like Cyclops is waiting for before he shoots, and eventually he just shoots when he finds a shot. Like there's nothing changes between his shoot and non-shoot kind of states.
The first thing that they say is like, I should shoot the thing, and then Wolverine says just shoot the thing, and Cyclops is like, no, if I hit it, it'll shred it and it might kill her. The very first thing that Wolverine does when he gets over there is try to shred the thing. He was literally like, it was like, oh wait, Cyclops said shred the thing, didn't he? Yeah, that sounds right. Like, you get that Arrested Development like flashback of not pictured. Like it's
exactly.
And then you get this scene where Magneto is like holding his claws in midair, and finally Cyclops shoots Magneto, and Magneto goes falling. Wolverine shreds this thing, and like Rogue is sitting there. Meanwhile, like the gooey spiderweb mutant DNA changing thing has been kind of slowly creeping out. The heads of state have disappeared. They all ran away, and I'm sure like there's going to be some serious fallout in the paper tomorrow about that.
Yeah, you're gonna get like the janitor who stayed behind to pick up cups.
Yeah.
Like, what if the power if he was a mutant? So Rogue is dead, but we know how to bring Rogue back to life. It's no big deal.
Yep, that's all right. That was like a quarter second worth of tension right there. Thanks.
Yep. This is how she gets her stripe though from almost dying. And here's the thing, right? Mystique comes back as Senator Kelly, right? Like this is this happens. There's a little bit of like waking up everybody, doing their things. But just to bring this up is that like, why wasn't that a better plan in the absolute first place? Like if
It seems like you could
instead
get
of taking
so
over
much more
Gyrich,
done.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, or how about the president?
Sure.
How about anybody you want? Like if you have the power to replace anybody in the, rather than turning them into a mutant, like literally just take control of people and make them say the things that you want them to say.
Well, especially because like it'd be very easy to take over somebody close to the president, act exactly like them because you're pretty much just sitting there waiting for the president to interact with you. Learn how the president is and how he handles himself, and then take like that's shape-shifting 101. I shouldn't have to tell you this, Mystique. You've had this power for 20 years. I shouldn't be explaining this to you.
Yeah. Were you asleep when they taught the Kree Skrull War in school?
Well, actually, maybe I take it back. Maybe in this case, Mystique actually should have gone to Xavier School of Gifted Mutants, where she would have learned shape-shifting 101. So maybe Xavier's actually doing it right. Hey, whatever.
Yeah, Magneto doesn't understand how to teach. But it's so like they see on TV and they're just like, well, this ain't over yet, and it's like, okay. Like it's fine. It's kind of a cool idea that Mystique survived. She had to survive for the sequels and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's dumb that they just didn't do that in the first place rather than the big DNA Blaster 2000 thing.
Yep. And then so everybody pretty much just wakes up and is okay. And we get some kind of epilogue stuff where Xavier is explaining to Wolverine that, hey, like I've looked in your brain and you remembered Alkali Lake. You might want to go explore it. And so that's, pretty much like a giant Weapon X symbol right there.
Steal my son's Cyclops cycle. Motorcyclops.
Yeah. So he takes off to do that. We see the Kelly on the news. As he's leaving, Wolverine gives Rogue his dog tags because he's literally like a high school boy who doesn't know how to let go of girls. Yep. Hold on to this. I'll be back for it. Like, no, dude, why don't you just keep your gross ass dog tags?
How much blood is on this?
Yeah, Sabretooth had these in his mouth earlier tonight. I don't want to touch these. And that's really about it. I think I guess we do see the Magneto and Xavier in Magneto's like all plastic prison playing chess with each other. And there's like this, debate thing of why do you even do this and all that stuff, which is good. Like anytime these two guys interact as these two characters, I'm 100% absorbed. Like it's all good stuff. I like it.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Like the chess scene's really, really good. I like Magneto's plastic prison, and it's it pays off fantastically in the second movie.
Mm-hmm.
Really good. And then the movie just kind of ends. Like there turns out to be a sequel. They're kind of setting it for a sequel, but I don't know how confident they were. So they don't. It tells a complete story. It's not cliffhanger or anything like that.
Yeah.
And like the universe, like it sets up is good. Like this is a good, a movie I want to spend more time in. Or a universe, and like the movie itself on a whole I think is pretty decent. It's just the last third of it that is stupid as hell.
Yeah, it kind of just falls apart at the end, and like that happens a lot with these superhero movies where they get everybody together and then like what do we do now? Like the default action of like superheroes have to show off their powers, and most superhero powers are have to do with fighting each other, so the only thing they can ever do is fight. And I would watch a superhero movie where nobody did anything but like debate like they were the UN, right? Like, and just do like random shit with their superhero powers on the side. But that's just never going to happen. Like they're going to have these big bombastic fight scenes. They're going to have to smash the action figures together at some point. And
there are ways to do it.
It's okay.
Like two does everything this one does better. It's one of the few like straight upgrades, and it's also one of the best superhero movies.
We'll talk about it in between season 2 and 3 of the cartoon, but holy shit! Like the fact that the first movie was made and was good was like a mind blowing experience, and then 3 years later you get X-Men 2, and it's just fucking phenomenal. Like it's literally that upgrade meme from 2016, where someone hitting a button. Like it's crazy how much better it is and how much it holds up. It's more.
It's almost. It's a contender for my favorite superhero movie. Like, it's fantastic. Like it is, Avengers level good, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And without some of the like the MacGuffins in X-Men 2 are kind of way better than a lot of the MacGuffins that we see in other of those movies. So I'm very excited to cover it for the show.
Yeah. I mean, we don't like, let's not commit to doing that between seasons 1 and 2. I think it probably like, we'll do the movies in order, but I just desperately want to hit that Generation X movie at some point. So like, it is
Just that Generation X thing, because Dr. Static and Slack posted it the other day, and like I just watched the first 5 minutes, and like I don't know who was who. I didn't get that far into it, but like there's a lady doctor whose power is apparently the same as Storm's, where she just makes a bunch of wind go to a certain direction, and just like knocks these two guys down a bit and like runs away. It's like what? Yeah, into it. Yeah, I did say between season 2 and 3, none of those plans have been firmed up yet. Yeah, so don't listen to me at all on the scheduling. Just
we'll do whatever we want. We'll do whatever we want.
Follow the Twitter that we made at DOFC Podcast on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks you guys for listening. If you like this show, we're coming back. The next episode is actually going to be a like Q&A letters responses episode. We're going to do those between seasons as well. So we're kind of setting up this rhythm of 4 to 5 episodes per season of the cartoon. A movie, and then a responses episode. So kind of in 6-issue burst. Like a trade paperback. So the next episode will be a response episode. After that, we're going to be hitting the ground running with season 2, which opens with Mr. Sinister and the Nasty Boys. And I'm so excited to get into the Nasty Boys, which are, some say, inarguably the greatest X-Men villains. Gorgeous George.
Absolutely.
Tar Pit. The strong guy.
Oh man, this is gonna be so good! I cannot
there's
wait.
There's two just strong like beast guys in that. One of them, his power involves like smelling bad, I want to say.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Yep. Looking forward to that. So.
I like how that there in this universe there can absolutely be dumb mutant powers, because that would be my luck. Would be like, oh, you're a mutant. Oh, are you an X-Man? No, I just look like a deformed bird.
Yeah,
that's my jam. What do you do?
Yeah. That arc with that where he gets her pregnant, and they have those nightmare babies is so good. Like keeping them shut. So like Grant Morrison's X-Men is my favorite X-Men. So if you like the show, ratings and reviews are very important early on in a show's lifespan. So we've gotten several very lovely reviews. I really do appreciate it. But more of those is always good. And the way you can directly support the show, the reason why we have this show is the Duckfeed Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/DuckFeedTV, just giving a little bit of money makes a big difference. But take a look at those rewards, see if there's anything that suits your fancy. And we will really appreciate it if you're able to help.
Sure. And if you want to chat X-Men with us on the internet, Gary is at Gary Buh on Twitter, GaryBuh. I am at JG Greer on Twitter, and I will talk to anybody about X-Men at any time. So please let me know. Please.
And we'll talk to you on the Slack. If you do join our Patreon, we have a Slack channel to talk about this show. So that is has been a fun place for lively X chat.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it, and we will see you in the next episode.
See you in 2 weeks.